Thank you. Thanks, Avery. Thanks, Mayor. Good evening. I am Kenya Merritt, Acting Commissioner for the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Thank you. And I am so honored to be here with you as we celebrate and welcome our new Chicago Poet Laureate, Maida Alexandra Del Valle. Here at DK's and the City of Chicago, we are so grateful to our partners at the Chicago Public Library. Thank you, Chris Brown, Commissioner Brown, and the Poetry Foundation for your continued support for the Chicago Poet Laureate program and for helping us elevate the power of poetry across our great city. Thank you. So this moment feels especially significant at a time when history, culture, and truth are being challenged, being questioned, and in some cases, at the risk of being erased. Literary arts matter more now than ever. That is why we are so excited for Maida to step into this role right now. This is a moment that calls for courage, it calls for clarity, and it calls for creativity. It is a moment where our words carry power, where storytelling becomes an act of preservation, and where poetry becomes a form of resistance, healing, and hope. As Maida begins her tenure as an ambassador for Chicago's vibrant literary community, we are excited for the ways her work will honor our city's rich cultural legacy while boldly shaping the future. And so, launched in 2021, the Chicago Poet Laureate program places Chicago among just 16 cities in the nation with an official designation that elevates poetry and ensures literary arts are accessible, visible, and celebrated. And so tonight's program is a beautiful reflection of Maida's heritage, her lifelong connection to Chicago, and her profound contributions to our literary and cultural landscape. I'd like to also thank Nate Marshall, who will be joining Maida tonight, for what we know will be a thoughtful, powerful, and inspiring conversation. And thank you to La Escalita Bombera de Corazon, forgive me, but y'all know who they are. Can't wait. Who will be performing with Maida later tonight and bringing yet another layer of cultural richness to this celebration. Thank you to everyone in this room for being here, but most importantly, for believing in the power of art, culture, and storytelling. Give yourselves a hand. And so with that, I'd like, please join me in welcoming Idami Noriega, Vice President of Programs and Engagement at the Poetry Foundation, an amazing partner.
Wow, this is a packed room. Chicago came out to celebrate a poet, and that is really special. Good evening. Like Commissioner Merritt said, my name is Idalmi Noriega, and I'm Vice President of Programs and Engagement at the Poetry Foundation. And it is a deep joy and a true honor to welcome Maida Alexandra Del Valle into her term as Chicago Poet Laureate. I first encountered Maida's work many, many years ago on deaf poetry. That was long enough that I don't want to do the math. We don't need to think about that. But one of the things that I still remember very, very clearly is that feeling that her poetry opened something in me. There was an uplift and an immediate recognition. And of course, as I learned more about her art and got to know her work in Chicago, that deepened here in this city, where I have had the privilege of witnessing Maida celebrate our shared Boricua heritage through poetry, through movement, and through the living rhythms of bomba. She is a gatherer, she is a teacher, and she's a bridge builder. And I am so excited to see her take on this role, calling in the city's many voices and bringing us together through her art and through teaching for the next 2 years. Before I go any further, I want to pause and take a look around this room because there are so many poets here. So thank you all for coming out. As we know, Chicago is a city where the poetic muscle is strong, and it is beautiful to see it flexed here with all of these poets coming out to show love for Maida tonight. Of course, special cariño to Avery R. Young, who's passing the baton. And to Mark Turcotte, Illinois Poet Laureate, who is also in the room. Thank you both, and thank you to all the poets in the room for being here and for continuing to shape and hold this city through your poetry. I would be remiss if I don't also acknowledge my boss, Michelle T. Boone, who unfortunately could not be here tonight, but she was the visionary leader who a few years ago called our partners and said, why don't we have a poet laureate? This is an important city for poetry and we should have one. So thank you so much to our partners at the mayor's office, at DK's, and at the Chicago Public Library. Your teams have been amazing in creating a model that very, very quickly has become a model for the whole nation. So thank you all. Chicago, in this city, commitment matters, and so do poets. Tonight, we celebrate Maida del Valle, but we also celebrate a city that understands that poetry and the people who create it are vital and are alive. So thank you so much for being here tonight for the celebration.
Thank you, Adalme. I'm Library Commissioner Chris Brown, and I'm so thrilled that our city library could be a supporter and partner for this work. I also want to thank Adalme and Michelle Boone and the Poetry Foundation for not only championing poetry in Chicago, but across the globe. Let's give them a round of applause. And it's an honor to be celebrating Maida. It's an exciting night for our city. I think it's an exciting night for our creative community. Chicago is a home to a world-class poetry community. It's also home to a world-class civic community. We've touched on some of Maida's background. We've touched on some of how this program came to be. And I just also want to recognize the civic community that has made this program possible. Collaboration, of course, with the Poetry Foundation, with the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kenya Merritt. I also want to thank Amanda Carlson and all the work that the DK's team does. I also want to thank our library team for bringing poetry into our neighborhoods, into our neighborhood libraries, especially Jen Lezak and Mariela Colon. Thank you so much for supporting this initiative. And of course, our Mayor, Brandon Johnson, and our city leadership, who understand the importance of our world-class creative community in a city like Chicago. Chicago is most definitely a remarkable literary city. Libraries have been a long part of that tradition. We're spaces across Chicago where neighborhoods connect to stories, ideas, to media, murals, history, and poetry. Through our libraries, poets have connected directly to Chicagoans for generation after generation, from Gwendolyn Brooks and Langston Hughes at the Hall Branch in Bronzeville, to readings with U.S. Poet Laureates Ada Limon and Joy Harjo, and of course through workshops with Avery R. Young. Thank you all so much. We're excited to work with MIDA to continue bringing poetry directly to Chicago neighborhoods. And as Deputy Mayor Kenya Merritt mentioned, this program reminds us in this moment that culture and creativity are essential to our freedom of expression, to our civil liberties, and to democracy. I know Mayor Brandon Johnson shares that conviction and the conviction that a world-class city of creatives and culture are essential to the greatest freaking city in the world. And that's now my cue to invite and bring up our mayor, Brandon Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner Brown, for that introduction and your leadership. Good evening, everyone. It is great to be here with you all as we celebrate and welcome Chicago's one of the most dynamic creatives in not just the city of Chicago, but throughout this country, our new Poet Laureate, Maida DeValle. And I do want to thank again our Commissioner, Chris Brown, of course, Deputy Mayor and Acting DCASE, Commissioner Kenya Merritt, the Vice President Programs, Poetry Foundation. Thank you, Ms. Noriega, for your leadership. All the poets and literary partners that are here today. And we do have a special guest, though, that's with us tonight. It's Maida's nephew is here. And Maida, nephew, you want to just wave and say hello to everybody? Come on, y'all. Y'all give it up for Maida's nephew. My guy. You got to give honor to who honor is due, right? But we're all gathered here this evening at a critical time in our nation's history, quite frankly, our world's history, where the humanity of all of us is being threatened. And I'm thinking about the words of William Wordsworth, who once said that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. And as we think about the power that this room possesses, full of creatives, poets, who use their talents to uplift people, inspire change, and to drive movements. If there was ever a time for a poet to speak not only into our today, but into our tomorrow, that time certainly is now. And that is why having a Poet Laureate here in Chicago is so important. They not only create and share poetry that captures the feel of the city and the mood and the temperature of this moment, but they make what is possible more accessible. You do that through workshops, readings, and your projects. But more importantly, you all show us how vital poetry plays in the development of our society, how it connects us through our shared traumas and challenges and our victories, and how it bridges the gap between the multiple fields and disciplines. I remember as a public school teacher, one who taught social studies, I had to get real creative. I know none of you nodded off in social studies ever, but it is through poetry and through art of how we connect our past and how we dream of a better tomorrow. And today we are certainly proud to welcome Maida into this incredible role in her tenure as the next Poet Laureate. And she has taken the baton from a proud West Sider, the Chicago's inaugural Poet Laureate, Mr. Avery Young. Now, you all know how I feel about the entire city, but, we had to get the inaugural process started on the best side of town. I only got one or two witnesses there, but that's all good because joining the ranks of the Illinois Poet Laureate, from Mark Turcotte and Chicago Youth Poet Laureate, Isla, Kitty Cameron Mora, I do want to take a real moment, seriously, to thank our brother Avery for your services as the first Poet Laureate, for seeding and setting the foundation for future laureates. You know, our work goes way back before either one of us, you know, had to put on decent outfits. You know, we go back to the days when we only had a pair of jeans and a hoodie. But I'm so proud, though, that we are passing and shifting this moment to Maida. You know, someone who is part of an incredible culture, Puerto Rican parents who molded and shaped her through the rich heritage and tradition of Puerto Rico and the grit and drive of the South Side of Chicago. You know, it was at a young age that Maida discovered the strength of her voice and learned how to use her words to empower others and to contribute to something greater than herself. I would imagine her parents probably had some challenges every now and then with that powerful voice that she had. I'm sure they may have to remind her a couple of times. But they clearly reared her in a way that not only gave her the confidence to be the person that she is today, but then able to find her talent being invested in by our public schools and a teacher that introduced her to poetry, and she never looked back. Rooted in hip-hop culture, she developed her talent in creative spaces, drawing inspiration from the people, places, and experiences that surrounded her. And throughout her career, Maida has won awards, including the 2001 Grand Slam Championship and the National Poetry Slam, wrote 2 books of poetry, performed around the world on Russell Simmons Presents Deaf Poetry, and developed projects focusing on her heritage as a Puerto Rican and as a Chicagoan. Take a deep breath. She is carrying forward what her teacher set in motion years ago, using her work as an art educator to teach poetry in schools, colleges, and youth detention facilities. In addition, Maida served as the program director of Street Poets Incorporated and poet in residence with the Chicago Poetry Center, a recipient of the Dark Matter residency from Elastic Arts, and was awarded a fellowship from the Flamboyant Arts Fund and the Mellon Foundation. And she still somehow found the energy and time to become our next Poet Laureate. And that truly shows her dedication and love for poetry and all that it represents. You know, in closing, often during times of incredible distress and upheaval, let's just call it for what it is, pure evil. The abnormality that is coming from the White House is venomous, and quite frankly, it is working overtime to metastasize throughout our society. And that's why in this moment we look to the arts, to language, to poetry, to empower us, to uplift us, to inspire us to not just make the change, but to ensure that when we come out on the other side of this, that we are better than what we were when we went through it. And right now, with the state of things in our country and around the world, we are truly blessed to have a Poet Laureate who has shown us the importance of coming together, fighting back, and being unapologetic about who she is and using words to transform and to heal. And poet, to a courageous leadership. I'm reminded of Library Congress Rita Dove, who once said that poetry is language at its most distilled and most powerful. I have no doubt that Maida will use her poetry to elevate the unheard voices, inspire the next generation of writers, and show the world once again that everything dope about America truly comes from the greatest freaking city in the world, the city of Chicago. I look forward to her work And now I'm truly honored to welcome to the stage the 2026 Chicago Poet Laureate, Miss Maida Alexandria Del Valle.
Well, the best way for me to say hello to all of you and to introduce myself is with some poems. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to be accompanied by two of my favorite people. I'm going to be presenting some pretty new work that I've been working on over the last year about my family, about Chicago. Everything I write about is about my family in Chicago. But I want to dedicate this performance to my mom and dad who can't be here tonight. My mom is with my dad at home, and yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Okay. Need my reading glasses, cause
adiós madre mía y hermano querido, adiós madre mía y hermano querido, los dos he perdido, murió mi alegría, triste y vacía, miro al infinito, que sean benditos y manden consuelo, que tengo en el cielo mis dos angelitos, que tengo en el cielo mis dos angelitos. Lelo, lelo, lai, lelo, lelo, lai, lelo, lai, lelo, lela. So the story goes, by the time she was 5 years old, my maternal grandmother, Segunda Martinez Rivera, had lost her mother and a baby brother that she adored. Ibae, my great-grandmother, named Teresa Rivera, date of birth unknown, place of birth unknown, date of death unknown, resting place unknown. Ibae, my granduncle, name unknown, date of birth unknown, place of birth unknown, date of death unknown, resting place unknown. For days or nights or weeks or months or some undisclosed, unknown stretch of time, my grandmother said she would cry herself to sleep, inconsolable weeping for her mother and her little brother, until one night, in her tear-soaked bed, she finally drifted off to sleep, and in that in-between place, she was visited. The veil dissolved, and there was her little brother. I call him Tasio, short for Anastasio, his father's name, Teresa's common-law partner, Anastasio Martinez, my maternal great-grandfather, date of birth unknown, place of birth, Atillo, Puerto Rico, date of death unknown, resting place, Atillo, Puerto Rico. In the in-between of sleep and consciousness, of death and life, there stood little Tasio. Maybe he was waving in the distance, and maybe Segunda ran to him, seeing him just as she remembered, until she reached him and stopped still, noticing he was, in fact, just as she remembered, except that his hair, his clothes, and his entire body were dripping wet with water. Water pooling at his feet, water falling from his tiny body, water reaching where Segunda stood, and Tasio spoke. Segunda, por favor no llores más. Mira lo que me estás haciendo. Segunda, please stop crying. Look at what you're doing to me. Imagine a grief so tidal it could drown the dead in tears. A grief so deep only the ocean could rival it. Imagine the ghost of a child coming back to console you. I imagine my grandmother drowning. I imagine my grandmother reaching the bottom of the ocean floor. I imagine my grandmother breathing underwater and walking on a bed of seashells. I imagine the sea weeping with her. I imagine this might be the origin of the sorrow that lives in the heavy-chested women of my mother's family. I imagine that Tasio and Teresa, birth date, birthplace, death date, and resting place unknown are somewhere, swimming in a salty palace of pearls and starfish and iridescent fish that fractal the water into a prism. I say spirit and mean the living. I say living and mean ghosts. I say water and wonder what its language is. I say water and mean somewhere across divide of spirit or land or grief. I say water and mean the place I come from. From that day forward, Segunda stopped crying for her little brother. Lelo, lelo, lai. Lelo, lelo, lai. Lelo, lai. Lelo, lai. City of big wind, city on the edge of the great water, city of fire and ash, twice burned and built. You were a village, resting at the confluence of prairie and aqueous body settlement at the mouth of a river that emptied its song on the shores of Lake Michigami. We call it a lake, but let's call it what it is. An inland freshwater sea filled with seashells and boulders carved with the history of Mastodon still sleeping in its sandy bottom. I watch how your winds and waters meet to summon the memory of ocean, city that sings of marshlands and swamps, covered in prairies of tall grass and still taller skies, land where wolf and bison once roamed. Your first people said you smelled like wild onion and skunk, Chicago, and at the right time on a sweltering summer day when the wind blows a certain way off the stockyards on the south side, you still do. City of steel mills, scenting your air with smoke, birthplace of the skyscraper, streets crooked as your politicians, a prohibition playground for corruption and Capone. New York might have invented gangs, but you invented infamy, Chicago. City of neighborhoods and barrios surgically sliced and scalpeled with red lines, shrapnel shards of history buried under your cobblestone, asphalt, and pavement, arrowheads and underground railroad stops, Chicago. Nucleus of the railroads, metal wrought, wrangled, and tied to train tracks, Chicago. Stable to the iron horses and locomotives that carry America's commerce on the freight lines that trickle out from you like veins across the country. A poet I once loved said, "You are the heart of the country." I say you are a heart, beating a song so untamable they tried to tame your river instead, a song so loud it called your children north, a song that traveled south to the red dirt of Arkansas and Alabama, through the waterways of the Mississippi Delta and Louisiana's bayous, past the Gulf to the turquoise waters of the Caribe where my people heard you, like the call of an ancient conch shell singing, "Come to this promised land of spoiled milk and sorrow, leave all that you know and come to live the dream of being underpaid domestics and steel pipe workers, to be lavaplatos at the Conrad Hilton and bend your fingers crocheting piecework for pennies a week. Come to open businesses whose windows the gringos will shatter with bricks or burn down completely. Come to solder engine pieces for helicopters bound to Vietnam that will carry your brothers and sons. Come and bring your music, bring your own song and sing with me." And we did, Chicago. We brought all the music we could hold in our hands. We brought our barriles and cuatros, our lelolais and piquetes, our salsa, boleros and boogaloo, our guidos and guitarras. We brought our own pain and laughter and a song. We brought the strum of teeth chattering during a first winter snowstorm. We brought the rumble of plane engines revving on the last flight out before the hurricane. We brought the click of beads on the silver rosary our mother sent for the wedding she couldn't attend. We brought the rustle of El Vocero's pages and the classified ad announcing work in a strange place called Indiana. We brought the dissonance of being completely surrounded by our own language for the last time. We brought the sound of a great migration that never ended and wrote a new song with you, Chicago, city of my birth. city of my childhood, city of my broken heart, city of my lost children and love, city of all I love. You have never questioned while my heart lives burst open and split between two places. Instead, you have always given me the music to mend it. Décima para papi. Mi papá nació en la loma, rodeado de un platanal, y en esa tierra ancestral el cielo fue su corona. Un palmar le daba sombra y la quebrada su canción. Así él me dio la bendición y un legado que es mi dicha, de poder llamarme hija de un jíbaro de corazón. De poder llamarme hija tuya, papi, un jíbaro de corazón. De decir que tú me hiciste también jíbara de corazón. En el monte están los jíbaros de verdad. En el monte están los jíbaros de verdad. En el monte están los jíbaros de verdad. En el monte adentro están los jíbaros de verdad. En el monte están los jíbaros de verdad. En el barrio de Cerro Gordo están los jíbaros de verdad. En el pueblo de San Lorenzo están los jíbaros de verdad. En la loma monte adentro están los jíbaros de verdad. Allá arriba nació mi padre, mi abuelo, mi abuela y todo el mundo que quiero. How's your dad doing? Dying, I want to say, but not right away, so don't worry. It won't be a sudden or unexpected passing. Instead, every day is another small death. Yesterday, we buried raising his arms to put on a sweatshirt and brushing his own teeth. Today, we're having a memorial for forgetting how to sit on the toilet. Last week, we had a novena for how to use a napkin instead of wiping your mouth on your shirt. Currently, we are mourning how to eat a sandwich using both hands. A couple of years ago, we said goodbye to remembering his parents are dead. Today, we're going to see Mama y Papa because today he's living in Puerto Rico again. Yesterday, he wondered whose house this was. Last week, he was working in Indiana with his brother. This morning, there was a group of people sitting in the empty living room. Tomorrow, he'll look at my mother and ask her where his wife is. He likes her cooking. Later today, his brother, who passed 10 years ago, will be here to take him to work. This morning, he looked at me, and in the English he rarely ever spoke, said, "Good morning. I haven't seen you in a long time." Yesterday is today. Today is tomorrow, is the day before yesterday, is last year, is tomorrow, today, and there is no now anymore, and every sunrise is really just another one of my father's memories setting into a long night. It is another story disappearing into some neural pathway gone extinct. No more lightning flashes of recognition or remembering. En el monte están los jíbaros de verdad. En el monte están los jíbaros de verdad. En el monte están los jíbaros de verdad. We just worked on that today, y'all, so. This is Jonathan Pacheco and Anissa Vega on cuatro and guitar from La Escuelita Bombera de Corazón. This is Puerto Rico's national instrument right here. They are part of my artistic community. I guess we're going to the next part. Okay.
Yes. How about this new Poet Laureate, huh? All right. It is now my pleasure to welcome onto the stage our moderator for tonight. Another wonderful Chicagoan. Nate Marshall is an award-winning writer, rapper, educator, and editor. He's the author and editor of numerous works, including Wild Hundreds and the Breakbeat Poets' New American Poetry in the Age of Hip Hop. We got a few fans in the room, huh? He teaches at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he is from the South Side of Chicago. Please join me in welcoming Nate Marshall.
Oh, yes. All right.
This is so fancy, Nate.
I know, right? This is crazy. We were like, last time I saw you, we were like in my mama's basement.
I know. I got
Like,
to meet your whole family.
yeah, like-
That's wild.
Just at a party. Cool.
Super Chicago basement.
Wow, this is incredible. Thank you all for coming. This is like such a beautiful room. I'm like just now getting to see. Give yourselves a hand. You look good. So, Maida, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is awesome. I have a lot of questions.
Let's go.
But first, I just want to, I know that your journey, your sort of artistic journey, in many ways starts in Chicago and is rooted in Chicago, but really took you all over the country and all over the world, right, to both coasts.
Yeah.
And then you sort of made your way back here a couple years ago. So just how has it been to be back and to sort of re-engage and reconnect with the city in this way, and now in this new and much bigger way?
Yeah, it was an interesting transition period coming back home because I was gone for so long. Like I left in the late 90s to go to college, and then I went to New York, and poetry took off, and I stayed in New York for 4 years, and I went to LA looking for greener pastures, and I ended up staying there for 12, and then I came back home almost 10 years ago. My father had gotten diagnosed with Alzheimer's, who that piece that I wrote is for. And LA was done, the universe was like, it's time for you to go. Go. Like, I just kept getting, it was really loud and clear that it was time to leave, and I decided to come back home because this is where family is, and it felt like the right place to be at that time. So there was definitely like a transition period because everything was so different. Yeah. It was just different being away and coming to visit, or spending a couple weeks here, or even like a month, or or something at a time, to then come back and be living here again. It was like, oh wow, I'm really back home. I'm really back, like for real, I'm back. So it's been it took a couple years to kind of find my footing again, and I left a lot of friends and a lot of really cool things that I was doing, but I would say one of the most important things that kind of helped me get my footing and my grounding back here was my cultural community, my cultural home, La Escuelita Bombera de Corazón, I've known Evie since I started my bomba journey 15 years ago. And so in those periods of my life when I felt like I don't even know if I'm a writer anymore, I don't even know if poetry is what I'm supposed to be doing, like bomba kept me fed and kept me rooted and kept me creative, at times when I didn't feel that creative anymore. So that's why they're all here tonight with me. You're going to get to hear them.
Beautiful. So maybe cycling back a little bit, could just tell the people a little bit about where you're from, about sort of how you came to poetry, and just the genesis of that journey.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Born and raised on the South Side. And even that is a kind of interesting story in itself, because everyone thinks about Puerto Ricans in Chicago and they think about Humboldt Park, right? But in the 50s and 60s, there was a really bustling, thriving, significant community of Puerto Ricans based in Woodlawn and Inglewood, which was where my parents came to when they came here in the early 60s. So the first place my mom got an apartment was on 63rd and Woodlawn. I was born on 54th and Wood. And, you know, it was a lot of Puerto Ricans in that neighborhood. My brother and my sister are here. They can attest to that as well, you know. There's 13 brothers and sisters on my father's side of the family. 10 of those 13 came to live in Chicago at one point, right? So there were businesses, restaurants, civic organizations like Los Caballeros de San Juan. So it was really, we were really rooted, our community was really rooted on the South Side. A lot of people don't know that story. So I was born on 54th and Wood, and then we moved west to Chicago Lawn. And that's where I grew up. And my mother's devoutly Catholic and was really adamant that we had to go to Catholic school, so we ended up going to Catholic. All three of us survived Catholic school. And so my freshman year, I was always a bookworm. I always loved to read. But my freshman year, I had an English teacher named Mrs. Kelly at Maria High School. And Mrs. Kelly would have us do all these creative writing exercises, and she made us keep a journal. And then there were like other kind of bits and pieces that came in around that time. I started doing theater. I got involved with the organization called the Southwest Youth Collaborative. Two of my old mentors are here. Yeah, there's some people here who participated in some of the incredible programming of that organization launched, including the University of Hip Hop. So it was, and one of the really unique things about that organization is that there was a board of directors for the organization. There were, you know, adults, but for every adult position, there was also a corresponding youth position, and we had equal voting rights, right? When for board of directors meetings, the youth got to vote on where funds would get spent for programming. And so the youth were the ones that were like, we want hip hop programming. We want to have breakdancing classes, graffiti classes, DJing classes, rapping classes, right? So my earliest experiences as an artist, as a young writer, were in multidisciplinary, multicultural spaces of community, social justice, and empowerment for young people, so.
That's beautiful. And so you were doing like all the elements of hip hop.
I did.
Yeah. I
tell
heard.
my mom, she might still have a heart attack. I used to run out the house at midnight and go do graffiti.
Oh, you did graffiti. What did you write? Let's see.
I can neither confirm nor deny those allegations, but
Hey, look.
my name was Sleek.
Okay, very good. Very good.
my
I like
alter
that.
ego.
That's dope. So.
She might have put up some stickers or something, but yeah.
Very good. And so how do you make?
I used to break dance too. Or I tried to break dance.
Yeah, I mean, you know, hey, we're not all so limber.
Yeah, no.
So how do you go from there to being on Broadway to touring all over the world? Like what is that path?
It sounds crazy, but there is a thread. So so I started writing in high school. I got really interested in performing what I wrote. I make my way to Williams College in Massachusetts, and ended up going to get a degree in studio art, which was really wild and kind of out there as well. That was interesting. But I find my way back into writing poetry, you know, after also like dabbling in visual art and dance and all these things. And I find my way back into doing poetry, and so my senior year, I do this independent study on poetry and performance. I'm thinking I'm just gonna like write a 20-page paper and present the paper, like, you know, some, I don't know, kind of discussion type of thing, right? What ended up happening is that my dance teacher, Sandy Burton, I'm gonna shout her out because she'll watch this later, and she said hi earlier from Massachusetts. So my dance teacher was like, oh, no. Miss Thing, you have to, like, you know, this is what you do. You need to write some poems, too. So I started writing again. I started making some of my poems into videos because, you know, I had access to the camera and editing equipment in the studio. So I made poetry videos. And then that ended up turning into, like, an hour-long multimedia show with poems and videos and movement and music. And out of that
one-person show, I took a couple of those poems and I went to the Nuyorican Poets Cafe in New York when I moved to New York. And I started performing some of those poems at Nuyorican, and I started winning the slams at the Nuyorican. I started winning all the slams at the Nuyorican.
All right now. All right now.
The really funny part about that is I always run into people that I beat in the slam because I was always the only woman on the slam. They'd be like, oh, you're the girl who beat me. I'd be like, mm-hmm. So some of those poems I ended up doing at the Nuyorican, and eventually one of those poems I ended up, you know, at that time, they were filming the first couple of episodes for Def Poetry Jam in New York. So now we're like in 2000. I'm competing at the Nuyorican. I win at the Nuyorican. I make it to the National Poetry Slam, which I just devastated her to hear today. It's not even in existence anymore, my God. I go to the National Poetry Slam. I win at the National Poetry Slam, and that's when they're like filming tapes for people to be on the show, and somebody saw me, and they taped me, and they sent it in, and I made it in. And then that show eventually got picked up and turned into Def Poetry Jam on Broadway, which ended up touring and won a Tony Award. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
So it's like just these moments that you're just like, it doesn't matter, you know, why am I doing this anymore? And, you know, it's just like you just gotta keep putting in the work. There's gonna be periods of drought and seasons of abundance, right? But you have to keep working through those cycles.
Yeah. So I want to turn now to the thing that has brought us all into this room, this laureateship, right? So I guess how did you feel when you found out that you had this opportunity? And what are your hopes, what are your dreams for this platform?
Oh, man, I'm trying to think where I was the day that Amanda called me. And she's like, well, it's you. I was like, what? There's a whole process, you know. There's like, you send in this application, and then there's like an interview process, and then there's a vetting process. That was really nerve-wracking, right? It's like a vetting process that they put like any kind of political appointment in the city through. So they go through everything. Had to pay all my parking tickets.
You get them like wave now, though, right? It's good. Now you're good.
I mean, you know, moving into the Poets Mansion and stuff.
Yeah.
So
you know a guy. It's good.
I'll have my poetry chauffeur. I wish that would be really amazing. Housing, health insurance, and a chauffeur for poets. What? No, so you had to go through this whole vetting process, and then you know, it's just like hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, and then you just gotta wait. And you know, and then it just took time. So I was like, you know, it was. Way to go, Maida. Pat yourself on the back. You finished the application. You sent it in. Woohoo! And then I got the phone call, and I was just like, oh, my God. This is really going to happen. So I'm still kind of having, like, deja vu, like, weird moments right now tonight. I was like, oh, snap. That's that one dream I had.
And what are you hoping to do with the role?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm getting past the baton from like somebody really phenomenal, so you know, it's big shoes to fill. I think one of the most important parts for me is to like continue the work of just bringing poetry out into the city, into the libraries, into different communities, teaching, creating spaces for people to meet each other, to write together, to meet each other's poetry. To write about the city, to write about themselves, to write about their own experiences. Would love to, you know, focus some workshops working with young people, but also maybe with some elderly populations in the city. That's really near and dear to my heart because I live with two 80-year-olds. So that's one. And then, you know, a civic project, which will probably be tying in some kind of really cool hip-hop, graffiti-inspired public art. So, you know, combining those things that I love to do and that inspired me as a young person and just kind of putting poetry out into a really visual way in the city and reminding people how dope Chicago is, how dope we are as Chicagoans, you know, celebrating our creativity, celebrating our talent. You know, I think sometimes we look outward, right, to like set a standard sometimes. Like, no, everything we need is like right here in our city. We got so much here that we just need to nurture and take care of, you know. So that's what I'm really hoping to do, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Maida.
Thank you, Nate.
So,
was that 20 minutes?
I believe we're gonna have another bit of performance.
Yes. So we're gonna. So I have been a student and practitioner of bomba for 15 years, and I met one of the dopest bomberas ever. Like when I started my journey, Ibelis Diaz, bombera de corazón. Yeah, you know, bomba is one of those things that's like part of my artist practice as well. I write songs, I sing, and I dance with La Escuelita. And Evie was trying to, like, when she found out I moved back to Chicago, she was like, come here, come to this thing, come sing with us, come dance over here, come do this. She tried to like reel me in for a long time. And so I'm part of Las Bompleneras, which is the oldest all-women's bomba and plena group in the diaspora. For those who might not be familiar with bomba, it is the oldest musical genre from Puerto Rico. It is over 500 years old. It is like our direct telephone line to our ancestors, you know, into our African ancestry. It's music of resistance. It's music of celebration. It's music of joy. We write songs about heartbreak. We write songs about struggle. We write songs about, you know, como se dice, tirándole puya, like, you know, just taking little stabs at people, you know, like just talking smack. You know, we talk smack in bomba songs too. So it's all of those things. So I had to have my Escuelita here with me tonight. These are my people. This is my community. So we're going to do some bomba for you tonight. But y'all got to stand up. You can't sit and watch. So vamos.
Well, you did the introduction I was going to do. So thanks to Nate Marshall. And as we bring up our performers, we're just getting them set up behind me. But I want to say that I heard a little rumor out there in the reception. I'm probably going to embarrass this person, but was there a librarian in the room who maybe worked with a young teen in their library branch, and maybe that young teen is the Chicago Poet Laureate right now? Is that librarian here? Raise your hand. Oh, they're being shy. Ah, there you go. Let's give a round of applause. So thanks to all the educators and the librarians and the community members and the poets and the people inspiring people every day. You never know, maybe somebody who you're inspiring will end up being the Chicago Poet Laureate someday on this stage too, right? I think we are almost ready, so without further ado, La Escuelita Bombera de Corazón.
Good evening, everyone. We are La Escuelita Bombera de Corazón, and we are so honored to celebrate our amazing sister, Maida del Valle. Round of applause for Maida del Valle. And anytime we're celebrating, honoring, representing, we always like to bring our cultura directamente de Puerto Rico, Humboldt Park. So we hope you guys enjoy it. Hoy damos gracias a la cultura, a la bomba, a los ancestros. Damos gracias. Y dice, damos gracias. Damos gracias a la bomba, a la cultura borinqueña. Ay, damos gracias. Damos gracias a Eli Samuel, a rico, ay, qué rico, en la bomba puertorriqueña. Damos gracias, damos gracias. Habla, Maida.
Damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias.
A la bomba, dale bomba puertorriqueña. Ay, Eli Samuel, ay, los Rodríguez, ay, de Guayama, Puerto Rico. Damos gracias a la salud, a los ancestros, las escuelitas, Maida del Valle. Damos gracias. Eso.
Damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias.
A la bomba, a la bomba puertorriqueña. Damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias,
damos gracias.
Eso.
Damos gracias.
La escuelita bombera de corazón.
Damos gracias. Damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias, damos gracias.
Eso. Quiero bailar la bomba, dicen que me la van a quitar, pero con mi barril voy a resistir y superar. Quiero bailar la bomba, dicen que me la van a quitar, pero con mi barril voy a resistir y superar. Que venga el viento, que venga el mar, nuestra resistencia no se va a quebrar. Traigo mi barril, mi maraca y el cuá, vamos a resistir y superar.
Quiero bailar la bomba, dicen que me la van a quitar, pero con mi barril voy a resistir y superar.
Ay, que nadie me la va a quitar, que nadie me la va a quitar. La bomba prevalecerá y nadie me la va a quitar.
Quiero bailar la bomba, dice que me la van a quitar, pero con mi barril voy a resistir y superar.
Voy a resistir y superar, y nadie me la va a quitar.
Voy a resistir y superar. Voy a resistir y superar.
Eso.
Are you guys having a good time? Eso es.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda. Tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda. Tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
No le traigan perfume ni un capullo con espina. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda. Tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Busca rosas y gardenias y un gramo de azucena para bailar en la perfume. Busca flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda. Tráele flores a segunda. Busca ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele rosas y jazmines y un ramo de azucena. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
No le traigas un perfume ni un capullo con espina. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca rosa, busca jazmines, tráele flores.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Busca un ramo de lirio blanco,
tráele flores a segunda.
No le traigas un perfume,
tráele flores a segunda.
Ni un capullo con espina,
tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele rosa y jazmines,
tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores y gardenias,
tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda,
tráele flores a segunda.
Busca un ramo de lirio blanco,
tráele flores a segunda.
No le traiga un perfume,
tráele flores a segunda.
Busca un ramo de lirio blanco,
tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele rosa y jazmines,
tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda,
tráele flores a segunda.
No le traigas un perfume,
tráele flores a segunda.
Ni un capullo con espina,
tráele flores a segunda.
Ay, tráele flores a segunda,
tráele flores a segunda.
Ay, tráele flores a segunda,
tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele un ramo de lirio blanco,
tráele flores a segunda.
Ay, tráele flores a segunda. Habla, Nati.
Y tráele flores a segunda. Y tráele flores a segunda. Y tráele flores a segunda. Y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda, tráele flores a segunda. Busca un ramo de lirio blanco y tráele flores a segunda.
Tráele flores a segunda.
¡Nos vamos!
Tráele flores a segunda.
¡Otra!
Busca un ramo de lirio blanco. Tráele flores a
Una más, una más.
tráele flores a segunda. Tráele flores a segunda. Busca ramo de lirio blanco. Tráele flores a
segunda.
¡Bomba puertorriqueña!
Yuca, ¿quién quiere más?
Yuca.
Oye la yuca.
Yuca.
¿Quién pide más?
Yuca.
¿Quién quiere más?
Yuca.
Oye la yuca.
Yuca.
Yuca pa' acá.
Yuca.
Come on everybody.
Yuca.
Yuca, yuca,
Yuca.
¿Quién quiere más?
Yuca.
Oye la bomba.
Yuca.
¿Quién pide más?
Yuca.
¿Quién quiere más?
Yuca.
Oye la yuca.
Yuca.
Es pa' bailar.
Yuca.
Es pa' gozar.
Yuca.
Oye la yuca.
Yuca.
Mira nada más.
Yuca.
Oye la yuca.
Yuca.
Yuca nada más.
Yuca.
Ay de la yuca.
Yuca.
¿Quién pide yuca?
Yuca.
Ay yuca. yuca pa' allá,
yuca,
yuca nada más,
yuca,
yuca nada más,
yuca,
yuca pa' acá,
yuca,
oye la yuca,
yuca,
¿quién quiere más?
yuca,
¿Quién pide más?
yuca,
Oye la yuca,
yuca,
come on, let me hear you,
yuca,
come on, Chi-Town,
yuca,
oye la yuca,
yuca,
ah, yuca,
yuca,
¿quién quiere más?
yuca,
¿Quién quiere más?
yuca,
¿Quién quiere más?
yuca,
¿Quién quiere más?
yuca,
Oye la yuca,
yuca,
¿quién quiere más?
yuca,
Yuca pa' acá,
yuca,
yuca pa' allá,
yuca,
yuca pa' acá,
yuca,
yuca nada más,
yuca,
yuca nada más, yuca pa' acá, yuca pa' acá, ay de la yuca, ¿quién pide más? ¿Quién quiere más? Ay de la yuca, ¿quién pide más? ¿Quién pide más? ¿Quién pide más? La escuelita. Thank you.
Bomba puertorriqueña, sí.
Gracias.
The library website and DK's website for more information on all kinds of upcoming events with our new Poet Laureate. Have a great night. Get home safe.